Welcome back to All Things Pink, where we discuss all things women over 40. It is June, and this is the month that we celebrate Father's Day. Now, you might be thinking, what on earth do fathers have to do with women over 40? Well, actually, a lot.
Out in the open, to the horizon, where your heart can finally breathe. Out in the open, to the horizon, baby, let your love run wild, wild, wild. You gotta get out there and explore, baby, let your love run wild, wild, wild.
Okay, guys, so welcome back to All Things Pink. And last month, we celebrated moms, right? It was May. We were celebrating Mother's Day, and we talked about motherhood and sacrifice and guilt and the beauty and complexity of being a mother and all of the things that we carry with us well into adulthood, into our lives. And so this month, I wanted to kind of shift our focus a little bit to fathers. And we are going to celebrate them, right? But I also want to go into something just a little bit deeper with this. So, whether our relationships with our fathers were wonderful and amazing and loving or complicated, sometimes painful, absent sometimes, loving, traumatic, challenging, somewhere in between, some combination of all those things, whether or not they were any of those things, those relationships, just like with our mothers, shape us, right? And oftentimes we don't fully understand this until we're much, much older, after 40, right? So there's that connection. That's why this is an important conversation, because by this point in our lives, we've experienced a lot, right? Most of us have experienced relationships and marriages, some divorces, our careers, professional aspirations, healing, personal growth, losses, gains. And we have enough life experience now to start connecting the dots. And we begin to ask questions like, gosh, why do I respond like that? Why do I react this way? Why do I struggle with trust? Right? Why do I constantly seek approval? Why do I have difficulty setting boundaries? Why is this flying around my head right now? Anyway, why am I attracted to certain types of people? Why do I have trouble with this or that? Why am I compelled to prove myself? And it's interesting because we ask ourselves questions constantly throughout our lives. And oftentimes, the answers to that can, at least in part, be found through our childhood experiences and our childhood relationships. And these are our earliest relationships, which, are pretty influential. And they are typically with a parent or caretaker or, whatever. So one of the most influential relationships that women have in their early childhood is their relationship with their father. Now, before I dive into that, I'm going to celebrate my dad for just a little bit. Many of you who listen regularly know and have heard how much my dad means to me. I talk about him all the time, right? I mention him all the time. I lost my dad in 2004, and it was very tragic. And, I still consider this the greatest loss of my life. I've experienced a lot of loss, but that loss still impacts my life in ways that sometimes are just really hard to grasp. But I consider myself incredibly, incredibly fortunate because I really had this amazingly wonderful father, and I feel very, very blessed. He is truly was one of the most amazing people I will probably ever know. Um, Now let me be really, really clear about this. I gush over my dad, yeah, because I do bring out and see all of the amazing positive things that how he impacted my life. Um, but I'm going to be really, really clear in saying that my father was not perfect. I don't believe perfect people exist. He was human. He made mistakes. He had flaws, the character flaws, the behavior flaws at times. He had opinions. We didn't always agree. He carried things from his childhood with him that I can only recognize now, by the way. That he likely never even understood himself. So, and I'm sure I was incredibly difficult as a teenager. So, but if you look at the overall impact and the overall story, he had a positive impact on my life, and I can honestly say he shaped me for the better, and I can take from that. One of the things that made our family a little bit interesting and unique was that my dad was the stay-at-home dad. He was my mom was the breadwinner, and he stayed at home with us. And today, in today's time, that may not seem so unusual. That happens a lot now. But at that time, it was unique, it was different. Wasn't always looked highly upon by, I cherish that. Looking back now, I say, that was actually a really good thing. It gave me a close relationship with my dad. It also gave me this ability to think outside the box and realize that that dynamic worked for us and that was okay. Right. And so that I've used that kind of character trait in my life, which I believe has contributed to my success. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the things I loved about him as a person. I think this is really important as we get into this because I'm looking at him as a person. My dad was always true to his word. If he said he was gonna do something, he did it. He was there. Now, my mom would say he never finished projects, right? But his intentions were always really good. But when it came to us, if he said, "Hey, I'm gonna be there," right? He was there all the time. You could count on him for that. As a dad, he was a big protector. He created safety and not just physical safety. You could talk to him about things, even if it was uncomfortable, you could talk to him. He created this emotional safety within our tribe, right? He was incredibly creative and intelligent, and he sought knowledge. He was a free thinker, and he wasn't afraid to question things or question conventional thinking or challenge it. Um, he sought knowledge all the time and encouraged other people to do the same. I loved that, right? And I carry that piece with me as well. He was steady, much like being able to be counted upon. He was steady. His character was steady. His convictions were steady. His values were steady. His love was steady. It was always there. There was no like up and down with that. His convictions were what they were. His kindness was immeasurable. He was incredibly kind, and he had this way. I used to say, especially with animals, it was just this weird connection that he had with nature and animals, and I loved it. And perhaps I think one of the greatest gifts, and I'm going to say this is a gift he gave to me, but this is also, what I loved about him was the example that he set with my mom as far as how much he loved her and how committed he was. My dad loved my mom deeply. Now, he made mistakes and he wasn't always the best partner. That is true. But he was loyal, he was faithful. He tried so hard to make her happy and make us happy, and he showed up for his family every day, flaws and all. But he did it not through, having the conversations. Don't get me wrong, we had lots of talks, right? But he did this through actions. And those actions really matter because that is what we know as modeling, right? So children don't just listen to what we say, what we tell them to do, what they should do, all of that. They're watching what we do. And this can be extremely difficult, right? Because we're all flawed and we make mistakes, right? So they're always watching and that can be daunting. Um my dad also taught me lots of things. He shaped me, not just with who he is, but how he did things. He taught me to be my true, authentic self, that was always okay, right? To be authentic, even when people disagree with me. And that was just an okay place to be, and I carry that with me through everything I do. He taught me, and really strongly, that women could do anything. Long before female empowerment became a mainstream conversation, my father was telling me constantly, "You can build your own path. You can do anything." He had a very high respect for women. He treated them with respect, and I always valued that. And he never allowed me to think I was ever going to be less than anyone else. He taught me to seek knowledge, right? To, if I didn't know something, go find the answer, learn, try, fail, get back up again, try again. He taught me mindfulness before mindfulness was trendy. One of the things I absolutely love that he taught me was how to sit still, how to be able to sit with myself, how to observe nature and connect with it, and to appreciate that stillness. We're constantly going, 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 going. And he always was trying to teach us to slow down. And I use that today and I love it. So thank you. Values. He taught me values, the golden rules. I remember this, like, carved into my brain, integrity, respect for other people, but also respect for yourself, honesty, personal responsibility, always accountability. That was a huge one. How to love someone. And perhaps, and most importantly, he taught the lessons by example, not perfection, but by example. And the older I get, the more I appreciate this. I really, really do. And um, I also know, though, that not everyone listening or watching has had the same experience. Some women listening today may have had incredible fathers, and they probably still do, right? Others may have experienced absence, neglect, abuse, horrible experiences. They may have experienced betrayal, addiction, abandonment, or relationships that were deeply painful. All of those experiences matter also, because whether positive or negative, fathers leave a fingerprint on our lives, right? So, celebrations of parents, like these months that we have them, can be very complicated. And for many, this is a very painful holiday for all kinds of reasons. On one hand, dads are human, right? And hopefully, in a lot of cases, doing their very best. On another hand, there can be a lot of trauma, lasting wounds around fathers, but we're going to save that part of it for another time. That is a totally different podcast. And on another hand, many of us have tragically lost our dads. So it can be very sensitive, and that's okay. Today, we're going to celebrate them and hopefully positive impacts that they've had on our lives as now women over 40. Hopefully, we have a lot to celebrate. Let me be clear though, all experiences matter. So if you had that painful relationship or still do, or did not even know your dad again, or had traumatic experiences, we see you and we appreciate that and we acknowledge that, right? We acknowledge that impact as well. Again, different podcast. Um, Research, though, consistently shows that fathers have a significant impact on women, on daughters, right? On how they view themselves, their relationships, trust, success, and self worth, right? And sometimes those impacts are obvious, especially the really negative experiences. But sometimes they're incredibly subtle, unintentional, right? And inadvertent. And inadvertent ones are probably a lot more common than we think. And we get to over 40 And we're starting to see these patterns in our own selves and not realizing that unintentional things could have, contributed to that. So let's talk about how we're impacted and what we carry with us. Because as women over 40, these things still affect how we function. And we can celebrate the good. We can acknowledge the challenges, the trauma, while still celebrating what we've learned and come to understand. Now, the first thing is everyone talks about physical presence as being the most powerful influence. I don't know because physical presence can be really hard in certain situations. We have working dads, like hardworking dads, separate households. Physical presence, I do not believe is necessarily the most important factor. I think modeling is incredibly important. And I think we can celebrate that, right? And we can take from that. It's more than just presence, it's more than just being physically present. The father is oftentimes a girl's very first model of what trust looks like, very first model of what a male relationship is, right? Is the first male figure, if they're around, obviously. Children are always watching. I'm going to say it 100 times. They're always watching. It sounds a little scary. It is. Um, but a father who demonstrates fidelity and respect and kindness and partnership and emotional support provides this very powerful model for a girl's future relationships. Like this is modeling what commitment looks like. This is what respect looks like, right? And you can say it all day, but when you're actually doing it, it is powerful, right? Our relationship quality in the future is largely impacted by this, by what was modeled for us. Yes, on both sides, but we don't want to minimize that effect of a father on a daughter. Attachment styles are developed here. They're starting to be developed. That impact is incredible for this. How we set boundaries, right? That is so important. Self esteem, mental health, emotional regulation, all of those things are largely impacted by what they're watching their fathers do or not do, or whoever that male role model is, right? Career success and independence. There's a big one because I don't think a lot of people realize how important that one is, right? We personalize adult behaviors as children and we carry them with us, even when they have nothing to do with us. We could be totally not involved in it. And that behavior, we're going to personalize it, right? As a young person. Children don't just inherit genetics. They inherit the example. So women can become highly ambitious and confident and if this has been modeled, especially by their father, right? Same with aspirations and autonomy, stress management, resilience. That's a big one. Independence, navigating the world. All of these things we're forming all these things, right? So now before anyone listening starts to mentally make a list of everything that their dad did wrong or even that they've done wrong as a parent, let's just take a pause. Parents, fathers, they're human. Okay. I'm going to say it again. They are human. None of us get it right. Our parents didn't get it completely right. We're not getting it completely right. Not anyone. So the goal isn't blame. The goal is always understanding. Why? Because understanding creates healing. It creates positive outcomes. We are able to heal and work through things and process things and get to a better place. And we want to celebrate the good and the positive things. And honestly, we want to celebrate fathers who've also made mistakes, but who have owned them and worked towards change and repair because that too creates a very lasting impact. That is something that I think is overlooked a lot of times because when our parents, whether it be father or mother, today we're on fathers, have made a mistake, it is extraordinarily powerful when they own it, they acknowledge it, they repent for it, they make changes, and they work towards repair. That is a wonderful thing to model. So there is hope, right? So the beautiful thing about being over 40 is we still have the ability to grow. We still have the ability to heal and understand. We still have the ability to rewrite old stories. So we still have the ability to celebrate good things. So this month, let's take inventory, right? And celebrate all of the wonderful dads out there because there's a lot of them. And let's celebrate the ones that are doing their very, very best with the cards that they were dealt or the skills that they have. If you've had or have a wonderful father, celebrate that, honor that, acknowledge and appreciate that gift. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift. If your relationship was difficult or is difficult, acknowledge it. Start understanding and learn from it. Allow yourself, if you have wounds still, allow yourself to address them, acknowledge them, allow yourself to heal. Acknowledge how we have been shaped by our very first relationships, right? Acknowledge what that's done and what we carry with us. The burden will not be as heavy as if we acknowledge what we carry with us and we learn how to navigate through that. Thank you guys so much for joining me today here on All Things Pink. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and like. Please feel free to share your experiences with your dad or celebrate your dad in the comments. If you are listening, thank you for doing so. And if you want to listen, you can find us on Spotify and Apple. And please join us next time here on All Things Pink and have a happy Father's Day.
You gotta get out there and explore, baby, let your love